Okay, so from this part, you will need to have a little bit of the calculation of the mathematics, but I hope you are not in panic because that will be very easy conceptualization. In terms of the population changes, which means the difference between the year of the 2023 or 2022, for example, there will be some of the changes consisting on these types of the differences. So let's suppose that in Jonesboro, the difference of the population of the time point 2 and time point 1, that will be caused by the number of the births, which is the very natural increase of the population, because these are the newborn babies. And the number of deaths in between that period, and that will be the decrease of the population. So this is a very, very basic assumption and very, very basic calculation, because we are assuming that the borders are closed, which means there are not in migration and they are not out of migration. But anyway, this is very simplistic, very, very simple calculation, because the number of births minus the number of deaths, the difference between the number of births and the deaths will be the natural increase of the population. Or if there are more number of deaths, that is the natural decrease, not considering the migration. However, we have the open border in our society. So the population change is based on the relationship between number of the births and the number of deaths and the migrations. So the number of in-migration, for example, so there are the increase of population minus the number of out-migration, which are getting out, so living on that area in that period of time. So the difference between in-migration and out-migration is the concept of the net migration. So if there are the more in-migration people compared with out-migration, there will be the positive number of the net migration. For example, if there were 100 in-migration and when there were 50 out-migration, so the net migration is 50, the 51. So the natural increase and net migration, the sum of the natural increase and net migration is bigger than 0, which means this part and this part is bigger than 0. It means that the difference between the time point 2 and time point 1 is bigger than 0, which means there are more people. So there are more people compared with the previous year and in next year. However, if the natural increase plus the net migration is smaller than 0, which is the minus number, that means there was the population decline in that period of the time. So in simple calculation, the more people, so the more on the births and the more in migration, there should be increase of the population in the area compared with the natural increase and net migration. If there are negative number, that is the decline of the population. So the crowd rate is the E and number of events, which is the number of events, and the mid-year population is the number of population in the July 1st. And the July 1st is usually the standard of population, the cutting the whole year as the half. You can calculate as the mid-year population as the standard of the starting point. So the n is the base of the rates. So when you calculate the percentages, so the cent is 100 in the Greek letter. But usually in the crude rates, we use 1000 as a standard number. So E divided by the mid-year population, multiplied with 1000, then you can calculate the crude rates of the population. Alright, so this is the video we can consider. Let me see. Let's hear about that.
And mid-year population is 2,345. And multiplied by 1,000. After calculation, this part, 247 divided by 230, 2,345 is around 0.105 something. So let's just move on. It's 1,000. That will be around 105. So that will be the crude rate of the live birth, or crude birth rate per 1,000. It means that there were 105 live births out of 1,000 population in the country.
Alright, so this is one possibility, one example of the calculating the crude rates of the live births within the period of time. Yeah, I know it might look very difficult and very challenging, so I will add more details of the examples throughout the semester so that you can be more familiar about this part. But usually, this kind of calculation will not be included a lot in the midterm exam or the final exam. But I just wanted to let you know this is the way of the calculation as one topic of the population. So in summary, the number of population, the total changes population, and the births and the deaths and the migration. These are the main components of the population change in the studies of the population. The birth, death, and the net rate of the migration. Alright, so in the next topic, the trend of the population, the crude birth rate, which means the live births out of 1,000, natural increase, the difference between the births and the deaths, and this is the crude death rate. So the crude birth rate minus the crude death rate, which is the difference between those two, these are the natural increase of the population. And the population growth and the population, the net migration rate, and also the population growth rate is compared with the net migration rate. And then these will be consistent with the natural increase between the difference between the natural birth, the crude birth rates and the crude death rates. So these are some of the relationship of those population components. So, not all problems are social problems. So, we would consider that these are some of the important topics of the population studies. And what do you think about the overpopulation? For example, do you think we have very enough number of the population in the United States? Or do you think there are too many people in the United States? For example. So you may have your own opinion about them, but these were, as you could see, these were some of the very key topic in the population studies. So this offsetting some belief of the cause and effect, and passing negative value of judgment and alleged effect. So these are also very relevant with the population studies, and we will cover that throughout the semester. Anyway, so these are many types of the resources, and he's my advisor. And you may see, if you want to see more details of the population studies, these are very good resources you can find. Okay, so this is also as we covered many of the topics of the population changes, and these are the effects, the demographic effects in the 2020 and 2021, and we will have a chance to look through about the 2022 on the material I will on the Canvas. Anyway, the births per 1,000 population. The crude birth rates, I mentioned that these are the rates of over 1,000. This is what we say, the crude birth rates. And these are the crude death rates, the rate of the increase in net migration rate. And you can calculate the population changes in that year of the time. Okay, all right. So the COVID-19 was a very big matter we could see, and this is the exercise quiz of the chapter, the textbook chapter number 1, and these might very difficult for you, for example, or sometimes. So I recorded one video about that so that you can review review that exercise quiz later. We don't need to watch this now. Alright, so thank you very much for your attention, and this is the end of the video of the topic number 1. Topic of the chapter number 1 of the introduction to the population studies. So within this week, there is another topic as demographic data, and I will upload some more additional readings on the Canvas system. Alright, thank you very much for your attention, and see you in the next video for the topic of the demographic data.